The president about to meet with House Republicans at the White House. His choice, keep the government open and lose his last best chance at funding his border wall and anger conservatives, or shut the government down partially and fight it out over the holiday. What we know right now, the House Speaker Paul Ryan was to speak to reporters this morning. Instead, he got a call during a private meeting of House Republicans, so he delayed a scheduled news conference. The reason, the president tweeting he was promised a wall. Then a White House official telling CNN the president might reverse himself and not sign what's called a continuing resolution, a temporary funding plan. The president now, his press secretary says, quote, at this moment, the president does not want to go further without border security. Again, that after assuring the Republican leadership in Congress he was prepared to go forward without more money for border security. At the meeting with the president this hour, we are told Speaker Paul Ryan, the incoming Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, his deputy Steve Scalise, and the Freedom Caucus members, including Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan. As of now, there is no vote scheduled in the House. The Senate passed this plan yesterday. The question is, does that plan survive, or are they back at the starting block? Caitlin Collins is at the White House. Caitlin, sources tell you the president has decided, maybe not, maybe I won't sign this.
And he's making that pretty clear on his Twitter feed, and that is why those House Republicans scrambled, and they are over here having that emergency last-minute lunch with President Trump right now, because they realize this deal to keep the government open is now hanging by a thread after we've seen this conservative revolt over there being no money for the border wall funding in this bill. And now President Trump is growing increasingly sensitive to that criticism that he's backing off his signature campaign promise to build a border wall, because most people in Washington realize this could be the last chance for him to get any money for that border wall now that Democrats are going to be taking over the House in January. Now, John, right now inside the West Wing, aides are saying they are having flashbacks to last March when the president threw a fit over signing that omnibus spending bill, something that he very clearly did not want to sign. And after he did sign it, he came out in front of cameras and said, I will never sign a bill like this again. Sources tell me that the president is fuming this morning, that he's in a similar mood to what that was last March, and now they will not guarantee that the president is going to sign this bill. And through that statement that Sarah Sanders that you just read makes pretty clear that they do not know what's going to happen. And John, if anyone tells you that they do know what's going to happen, they're wrong.
That's a good way to put it. Caitlin Collins, as the meeting unfolds in the hour ahead, please come back as we learn more information. Again, the president about to sit down with key House Republicans to try to sort out, do they try to change the spending bill? Do they add more money? Then the Senate would have to come back, tracking this on that end of the Capitol where there's a lot of confusion. CNN's Manu Raju live on Capitol Hill. So, Manu, do we any indication of what will happen in this meeting and then what happens on the Hill?
Well, Republican leaders are going to go to the White House to lay out a number of options that they could take this afternoon, starting this afternoon, including adding to this bill to keep the government open, funding for the president's border wall, potentially up to $5 billion, as well as disaster relief money that could pull some voter support. Now, these options were discussed, I'm told, by a source that in a meeting with Paul Ryan and top Republican leaders just moments ago. They're debating doing this in some part, John, to show that it does not have the votes to pass both chambers of Congress. It's possible the $5 billion could pass barely out of the House, but has no chance in the Senate. And at that point, then what? The question is, do they go back to Plan A, which was to pass a bill to keep the government open up until February 8th and punt that wall fight until then? Now, all these things are going to be discussed just right now in this closed-door meeting with the president. So how the president reacts and whether or not he digs in and says he will not sign a clean bill could affect how the Republicans decide to go forward. But no doubt the president's decision this morning, throwing the Capitol into a tailspin. Speaker Paul Ryan had told members at the beginning of the meeting this morning, it appeared that the president was going to sign this bill, the funding bill to keep the government open. But then he took a phone call from the president. He scrapped a press conference afterwards and went into this meeting with Republican leaders, and now they're headed to the White House. So a lot of uncertainty as we head into that deadline tomorrow to avoid a shutdown, John.
Uncertainty is an understatement. Manu, keep in touch again throughout the hours. You get more up on the Hill. With me in studio to share the reporting and their insights, Eliana Johnson with Politico, Michael Scher of the New York Times, Paul Kane with the Washington Post, and Tarini Partee with BuzzFeed News. We have seen this movie before, but we have a deadline tomorrow. They all thought they had a deal, and the president pulls back after blowback from his conservative base, saying, A, how dare you? You promised you wouldn't cave. He's promised that several times before, but you keep promising you're not going to cave, that eventually you're going to draw the line. And so is the president now going to say, go back to the drawing board? I want my border wall funding, which he won't get, I don't think. The math isn't there. Or will he just have a rage session and then blink?
This is deja vu all over again, but I would argue that it's worse because the president's supporters are not just angry about a potential cave on the border wall. They're upset about his support for criminal justice reform, which they see as a betrayal. And his hawkish supporters are enraged about his surprise announcement that troops are pulling out of Syria.
And some Second Amendment supporters mad about bump stocks. The president's taking it. There's a lot of incoming right now.
They're upset on multiple fronts, and this has created a maelstrom for the president that really has him flailing for a solution. And many of his supporters are urging him to change course on multiple fronts. Right now, I don't think we have any idea what will happen, but I think many people are urging him to sign a continuing resolution where he could kick this fight into the new year and then blame congressional Democrats who will take the majority in the House for blocking his border wall. Right now, there aren't even 218 Republicans in the House, compounding the difficulties for him even further.
And look, after every midterm election, when a president gets shellacked, they have a soul-searching moment. That is not different. Every president goes through that. What is different is how public this one is. This president sat in the Oval Office, 8 days ago, and said, I will proudly shut down the government over border security. Then he apparently blinked, and now is he going back?
He doesn't know which way to go. He took full ownership of a potential shutdown, which is like rule number one of government shutdowns is you never are the one who admits you're to blame. And his support on the Hill just kind of collapsed. They said, hey, buddy, you lost all your leverage. And so then he said, all right, well, geez, okay, I guess we'll have to pass this.
I think what we're seeing right now is the president desperate for any sort of win in this package. And we've seen him sort of phrase things differently. He's been talking about the wall, of course, but then he's also saying border security more broadly. And then now he's talking about steel slats. So if he gets any sort of money for steel slats, he doesn't need, I don't think, the $5 billion at this point for the wall to call it a win. So he's sort of moving the goalpost here a little bit.